Hey y'all, my name is Max. I'm an instructor at Youth Code Jam, and we have a summer Coyote coding camp from Spurs Give. This activity we're going to be making is kind of a long one, so feel free to take frequent breaks, do little bits every day, or go at whatever pace you want to go at. I'm going to quickly show you what this will look like when you're done going through all of the steps of code. So you can change the angle of the basketball here using the right and left arrow keys. And then you hold the space bar to create some power and then let go to take a shot. And then you can use the power meter or the color of the basketball to gauge for the next time you shoot whether you went too far or too little power. And then the hoop will move after you make a basket, and you'll collect some points every time you make a basket. What we're going to do now is open up a starter project. So to get to our starter project, you'll type in to a web browser, the address bar on a web browser, bit.ly/SGCC06211. And that will take you to the project page for the starter project. I'm already logged in, but if you are logged in, you should see a green remix button. You can go ahead and click on that, and that'll save a copy to your account. Make sure that you're logged in. If you aren't logged in or aren't signed up for Scratch, I do recommend doing so that you can easily save your work. If you're not logged in right now, you can still begin coding. Just click on See Inside, and that'll take you to the coding view. The reason that we're using a starter project is so we can have some custom sprites and the backdrop. To get started, the first thing that we're going to do is be able to change the angle of the basketball when we press on the left and right arrow keys, as well as just setting up some of our project. The first block that we'll need is a when green flag clicked event block. This is a hat block, so you can place it anywhere on your workspace, doesn't matter. Also make sure it should be on basketball by default, but make sure in your sprites pane down here in the bottom right that you do have basketball selected. Okay, so we have green flag clicked. This will start code whenever we click this green flag. First thing that we're going to do is head on over to the looks category. We are going to grab a block that says show. This will make sure that our sprite is showing in case we hide it later. The next thing that we're going to do is set up an initial direction for our basketball, which way it points. So you can go to motion and grab a block that says point in direction 90, and we can actually leave this at 90 unless you want to change the starting position for the basketball. Next thing we're going to do is head on over to the variables category and make sure that our two variables that we want to show are showing. So we're going to grab a block that says show variable, and you can actually grab two of these. And points, we can leave one as points, but we want to change one of them to power. This will make sure that they're showing in case we hide them later. The next thing that we're going to do is set up some initial values for our variables. And variables are just like places that we can store some values. They can be numbers, or we'll store some words in a variable too. So we need the block that says set variable, and we will need 3 of these blocks. So we are going to, let's do power first. So use the drop down to select power, and we're going to leave that at 0. Then we are going to set points to 0, so we can leave both of these as 0. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set shooting to no. What this will do, we'll use this for kind of like a toggle state. So sometimes we'll be shooting and sometimes we'll not be shooting, and we want the computer to know the difference between those two times. So the next thing we're going to do is set up our arrow keys. So we need a forever block. You can find this in control. This will make sure that whatever code we put in here is running constantly as long as the green flag is pressed. The next thing we'll want to do is grab an if-then block, and that'll go nested inside of the forever block. And in the pointy space on the if-then block, we are going to go to sensing and find a block that says key space pressed. And it has a question mark because this is kind of like asking the computer a question. Hey, is this key being pressed? We are going to change the space key to the right arrow key. Inside of here, what we're going to do is in motion, we're going to get a turn right or turn clockwise 15 degrees block and put that inside of the if then block. We're going to change this 15 to just a 1 so that you can control it finely. The next thing that we're going to do is kind of write the same thing but do it for the left side. So we'll need another if then block from control. Make sure that you're grabbing just the if then and not the if then else block. We don't need an else right now. The next block that we want to get is another key space pressed block. We'll put that in the pointy space on our new if then block and then change this to left arrow. We'll go back to motion and grab a block that says turn left 15 degrees or turn counterclockwise 15 degrees, and we will also change this to a 1. Now, if you press the green flag, you should be able to use the left and right arrow keys to change the angle of the ball and rotate it sort of around your Coyote sprite. Pretty cool. So the next thing that we're going to do is kind of set up our shooting process. We're going to be making a clone of this. So we need to check a few things before we make a clone. And also we're going to be building up some power when we press the space bar. So we need another green flag. You can find this in events. And you can put this anywhere on your workspace. And we will also need a forever block. So attach a forever block to the when green flag clicked. And also from control, we are going to put an if then inside of our forever block. The first thing that we're going to do is check just to see if we're not currently shooting. So the way we can do this is check to see if two things have the same value. If our shooting variable has the value no. So in operators, there's a block with one equals sign on it. This block will check to see if two things are the same value, and then return a true or false. So inside of this block, there's two spaces, a left and a right space. On the left space, we want to go to variables and grab this oval block that says shooting. We want to check to see if shooting here is no. If it is no, then we're going to do one thing, which is show. We can grab this show block again from looks, and we're going to put that inside of this if then. The next thing that we're going to do is check a couple different conditions. So this is called a condition, and we need another if then block to do so. This one's going to go right underneath our previous if then block. Make sure that you're not accidentally nesting them like this. We want them to be one on top of the other. And this time we are going to get from operators a block that says and on it, because we need to check if two conditions return true. And this and block has two pointy spaces. On the left pointy space, we are going to grab it from sensing the key space pressed block and put this in the left side. Make sure that you are, before you let go here, when we're putting blocks inside of blocks, the correct space is highlighted. So you don't want that whole thing to be highlighted. You just want the left space on the and block. We have if key space pressed, and we can leave this as space. And then the other thing that we're going to be checking for is this same exact thing. So one thing that you can do here, you can go to operators and variables and grab the same two blocks if you want. You can also right click on this block with the equal sign on it and click on the option duplicate from the right click menu, and then that will create that whole block, and you can pop it in the right side, insert it in the right side of the and block on our next if then. We have two things that we're checking for here: if the space key is being pressed, and if the shooting variable is currently equal to no. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a loop and repeat some things. We are going to get what's called a conditional loop and repeat until a condition is met. So this block is in control, and it says repeat until, and then has a pointy space. And inside of this pointy space, we're going to go back to operators and get another logical operator that says not. This one only has one pointy space on it, and we are going to put that in the inside of the repeat until. And the next thing that we need is another key space pressed block, so that you can find that in sensing. And we are going to repeat these actions until the space key is not being pressed. And the two actions that we want to repeat are, we want to change a variable. So before we were setting variables, now we're going to change a variable. So we are going to change power. So you'll get the change variable block from variables. Use the drop down to select power, and then we are going to change power by 1. So we can leave that as 1. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to wait a very, very short amount of time. So in control at the very top, there's a wait block. You can grab this wait block and attach it right underneath the change power. And instead of 1 second here, we're going to go with a very short amount of time and type 0.03. And this will just wait a very short amount of time so your power doesn't go up too quickly. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to set our shooting variable to yes, because this will happen once we let go of the space key. Then the things after the things that we're coding right now will happen. So we want to set shooting to yes. The next thing that we want to do is create a clone. So we're not going to shoot the same sprite towards the basket. We're going to do some magic and hide this sprite, but send a clone through the air. So we're going to set shooting to yes this time. Then in control, all the way at the bottom, you can grab a block that says create clone of myself. And it's kind of tricky to get these blocks where we want them. We want them to go right after the repeat until block, still within this second if statement that we have here. And then, so once you have these two blocks in place, the last thing that we're going to do once we let go of the space bar is we are going to hide this original sprite. Okay, so this code won't do a lot yet. You still will be able to build up power when you hold the space bar, but your power will stay for right now. We haven't told it to go back to 0 yet. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to set up some of the physics to make our ball go in an arc. And then we are also going to check to see if the ball hits the rim or if the ball goes in. And then we will make our own blocks to do those things too. The next block that we need is going to be a hat block in control that says when I start as a clone. And this is a hat block, so you can place it anywhere on your workspace. So when I start as a clone, we are going to set some values. So the first variable that we want to set is going to be called xv, which stands for x velocity. You don't need to know too much about physics to be able to do this part. We let the computer do all the math for us. But there are some blocks that are kind of tricky in this part. make sure that you get everything where it's supposed to go, because we're going to be putting a lot of blocks inside of other blocks. We have set xv to 0 that we got from the variables. We use the drop down to change this to xv. And instead of typing a number in here, we're going to do a little bit of math. So in operators, we are going to grab a multiplication block. This one has a little star on it and should be the third block down in operators. So there's two sides that we can put values in on this block. On the left side, we are going to do a little bit of math, or tell the computer to do a little bit of math. We don't actually have to do much of it. You're going to grab a block from operators that says ABS of, and then it has a value space. That's absolute value. We don't need absolute value though. We need something called sign, which is SIN, and we're going to put that in the left side of the multiplication block. Then in the value space on the sign of block, we are going to go to motion, and we're going to get a block that's all the way at the bottom. It's an oval block, and it says direction, and that will go in the sign of block. Now we still have our right side of our multiplication block. In the right side of our multiplication block, we're going to go back to operators and find the division, which is right underneath the multiplication that we got earlier. And we're going to insert that in the right side of the multiplication block. And this one also has two sides. So on the left side of this block, we are going to grab the rounded variable block that says power and put that in the left side here. And then on the right side, we are going to just type in the number 5. I know that's a lot of blocks, so take a minute to see if everything is where it should be. It should read set x velocity to sign of direction times power divided by 5. It's a lot of stuff. You don't really have to understand it if you don't know what sign is, but this will help our basketball move in an arc. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a whole, basically a copy of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my mouse over the set variable block and click on duplicate. And that means I won't have to create all of that again. I can just attach this whole thing underneath here. We just have to change a couple of things using the drop downs. So where it says XV, we are going to change this one to YV. And where it says sign, we are going to change this one to say cosine, or COS, which stands for cosine. And both of these blocks together, again, will just help our basketball move in an arc. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add in some motion for our basketball. Remember, all we're doing here is setting values in our buckets, but we need to actually do the motion. So we are going to grab another repeat until conditional loop block, and you can find that in control. The next block we need, we're going to put in this pointy space, is the touching mouse pointer block. We need to change the value from mouse pointer to edge. So this should read repeat until touching edge. So now we actually get to do some motion. So we are going to place inside of here a change x by and a change y by. Be careful not to grab the ones that say set x to. We need the motion blocks that say change x by and change y by. And then inside of here, instead of typing a number in here, we're going to use our variables that we just set. So in the variables category, for x, we need xv. And for y, we need yv. And those are just those little rounded blocks. And they will fit in the change x by and the change y by blocks. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to actually change our y velocity. So we need the block from variables that says change points by or change variable by. And here we're going to use the drop down to change this to Y velocity. Again, we're going to make a very small number here. And this number is actually going to be negative. So we're going to type minus or negative 0.5. And this will change this number a little bit as it shoots. We can test it out now to see if that works. So once we let go, after we build up some power, it should make a clone and then shoot that clone. But we still have some things to do. Our original sprite hasn't showed back up yet, so we'll need to do that. And the clone sprite, the cloned basketball, doesn't actually go away yet, so it'll just stay there. The next thing that we're going to do actually is we are going to check for a couple things. So we're going to check to see if the ball is touching the rim or if it goes into the bottom of the rim, because we want to miss if we go if we shoot at the bottom of the rim, but if we get it at the top of the rim, that's when we want the ball to go in. The first thing we're going to do is check to see if the ball is hitting the rim from the bottom. And we will need an if statement. So in control, we need the if then block. Be sure you're not grabbing the one that says if then else, just the one that says if then. And that's going to go underneath our change Y velocity variable block, but still inside of this repeat until touching edge. Okay, so we need to check for two different things here. So we are going to go to operators and get another AND block. So inside of this AND block, we have two pointy spaces. In the left space, in sensing, we want to grab the touching block, and we are going to change that from mouse pointer and make sure, first of all, that it's touching the hoop. And then what we're going to do is, if I zoom in here, you should be able to see that there are two different colors on the rim. There's a lighter red and a darker red. So what we're going to do is check to see if it's not touching that lighter red. And that'll make sure that if we shoot the ball into the bottom of the rim, it's not going to go in. So we need another logical operator, not, and we are going to put that in the right pointy space on the AND block. And another sensing block. This time we're going to check for a color. So there's a couple different ways you can check for this color. It does have to be the exact color of this red on the top. So you can either use the dropper tool. It's kind of hard to do this and make sure that you get the right color, but you'll just make sure you're on that top part of the rim with the lighter red. You can also, if you want to, use these numbers. So this color is for color, the value is going to be 1. For saturation, the value is going to be 89. And for brightness, the value is going to be 90. So two different ways you can do that is use these number values, or you can use the eyedropper tool and select the value from the sprite on your stage. Either way you do it, make sure that it says these numbers, 1, 89, and 90 for color, saturation, and brightness. Okay, so now that we are checking for the two conditions, we want to do something where the ball hits the rim. So we're going to add this code kind of later, but we're going to make our own block to put that code into. Over on the left here, there's a category that says My Blocks, and it doesn't have any blocks in it yet, but we are going to click on the button that says Make a Block. And this one, we can call it Ball Hits Rim. And you don't need to change any of these settings. Just type in something that describes what this block is going to do, and then click on OK. And what you'll notice is that you get this big block, this big red block on your workspace by default. It'll automatically create that for you. just stick that off to the side for right now. We're going to code on that a little bit later, but we're still going to put this block ball hits rim inside of this if statement. And that'll be ready to go once we define what that block does. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to check to see if the ball is actually touching that color. So again, we can actually duplicate this and then just change some things. So make sure if you're duplicating, you are hovering over the largest block that you want. So in this case, it's the if then block, and then right click and select duplicate. And this one will go underneath the previous if then statement, but still inside of the repeat until block. And this time we still want to check to make sure that it's touching the hoop, but we want to make sure that it's also touching this color. So we're just going to get rid of the not, and we don't need that block. And then we're going to get rid of this ball hits rim that we copied, because we're going to make a new block for this condition where the ball goes in. So again, back in my blocks, we're going to click on the button that says make a block, type in ball goes in, and then click on OK. And we'll get another one of these red blocks that we can define this block. We will do that in a little bit, but we are going to put the ball goes in block that now exists in my blocks inside of this second if then here. We're checking these two conditions for if the ball hits the rim or if the ball goes in. And then the last thing we want to do here is kind of reset so that we can take another shot. So in variables, we are going to set our power. So we need a set variable block, and we are going to set power using the drop down to change that. And we want this to say 0 actually. The next thing we are going to do is point in direction 90 so that we're pointed in the correct direction again, or the starting position again. And then what we're going to do is set another variable. So we need another set variable block. And this time we're going to set shooting back to no. And the reason we toggle this between yes and no and shooting is so that we don't build up power while we are shooting, like while the cloned ball is in the air, by holding on spacebar. And the very last thing we're going to do on this script is we are going to delete the clone finally. So whether it goes in or it goes too far and it touches the edge, the last thing we want to do is delete the clone. And now this shouldn't really change too much for what our project does here. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to define these new blocks that we made, because they don't have any code behind them yet. They do nothing right now. So we will do ball hits rim first, and you can organize your workspace however you want to. I'm going to move some of these down here. So the first thing that we want to do when the ball hits the rim, we'll play a sound. We are going to get the block from sound that says start sound, and it should have bonk. I think that'll be the first one that it'll have. So you shouldn't need to change this one, but if it says something other than bonk, make the sound bonk. You can always go back and change these sounds if you want to change the sound effects later. The next thing that we're going to do is get a block that says go to. We are going to choose, it'll say go to random position, but we're going to change that to hoop. And then we're going to do some more motion. We're going to point in a direction. So this just has to be a direction that's kind of in the opposite angle. I'm going to use minus 165. And then we are going to make the ball go down. So what we will do is grab another repeat until block, our conditional loop. And in the pointy space on this repeat until block, we are going to grab a block that says touching mouse pointer again, but this time we're going to choose edge. we are going to change y, our y value. So y is up and down. And we're going to change y by y velocity or yv. So in variables, we just need that little round block that says yv. And then we are going to change our variable y velocity as it goes down. And we're going to do this. So we need the change variable block. Use the drop down to change it to yv. And then we are going to put -2. So in the next thing that we're going to do, so what this will do is just make the ball go down towards the edge. And the next thing that we're going to do is set our power to 0. Make sure that gets set back to 0 and set shooting to no. So we need 2 set variables. We're going to change 1 to power and 1 to shooting, and make sure that we are setting the shooting to no. And then the very last thing we can do is delete this clone. And that will take care of what happens when the ball hits the rim. Now, when the ball goes in, we're going to do a few different things. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we get points for it. So in variables, we need to change points by 1. And that one, we shouldn't have to change anything on this block. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to broadcast a message. So you can find these blocks in events. We're going to get the one that just says broadcast message 1. We're only going to use one message, so it's okay to leave this as message 1 right now. But if you are using more than one, I would recommend making a new message and titling it. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to hide so that we can do a little animation with our hoop. The next thing we'll do is in motion, we will grab the block that says go to random position and change it to hoop. And we are going to point in a direction. Again, in motion. This time we're going to point in the direction 180 so that it goes down once it goes through the hoop. And then we are going to show again after we do that. And we're actually going to need this same exact chunk of code starting from the repeat until block here. So what we can do is right click the repeat until block and duplicate, and then just attach that underneath the show block, and that will make sure that the ball drops like that. You can click on it once to see it happen. You should be able to hear the sound if you do the ball hits rim. And I did actually, I forgot one block actually that we need to make so that our ball resets properly. And this is one of the very first steps I should have done up here in the very first script that we made. We are going to put I was wondering why it wasn't going back. We're going to put a block that says go to random position, and we're going to put this right underneath the point and direction block here while we're setting things up, and change random position to Coyote so that we can shoot from the Coyote. There we go. So now we should be able to test a lot of this working out. So you can use the arrow keys to change the angle, hold on spacebar, and then once you let go, it should launch. So I just missed one and it made a sound. And then if the ball goes in, it should just drop straight down once it goes in. So you can test these out a little bit as you're going. There we go. So we've got both of those functions defined. Here we made new blocks and put a bunch of code in them. So what's happening here is whenever the computer gets to this block, the ball hits rim block, it'll look over here and it'll go, oh, I need to do these steps in order. But this is a little bit easier to read over here. So this is why we did this way instead of putting all of these blocks inside of this if-then block. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to add a little bit of sound as like an indicator for the power. We can also, there's also a way you can do this with color, which I will show you. We need another green flag event. Remember that this is a hat block, so we can place this anywhere we want on our workspace. We've written a lot of code so far. Next thing we're going to do is a little bit of sound and color to indicate where our power is at. So underneath this when green flag clicked block, we are going to attach a forever, and this will again loop. It'll go through the steps from top to bottom and then go back to the top, and that'll happen as long as the green flag is pressed. Now we need to check one thing before we start coding the sound, and that is if we're not shooting. So just like we did over here, we're going to check to see if shooting is the value no. So in operators, we need that block, the pointy block with one equal sign on it, and that checks if two things are the same. And in variables, on the left side of this block, we are going to put the rounded shooting variable block. In the right side, we're going to type no. And if the computer answers yes or true to that question, we are actually going to check one more thing. That is if the space key is being pressed. So we actually need another if statement. We are going to nest this one inside of the previous if statement rather than putting them on top. We're going to put this inside, and we're going to put our key space pressed block. And we don't need to change this one because we're going to be playing sound for the power, and we use the space bar for power. First thing that we'll do inside of this if-then block is we're going to set the pitch effect. So in sound, we need a block that says set pitch effect to 50. And it'll say 100 by default, but we're going to change that to 50. The next thing that we need is a repeat until block, and this is in control. And this is going to go inside of this second if statement, so another nested C block. We're going to repeat until the space key is not being pressed. So in operators, we need the not block. In sensing, we need the key space pressed block. So we're going to repeat some actions until the space key is not being pressed here. Next thing that we're going to do inside of this, or the first thing that we're going to do in our repeat is we are going to start a sound, and this one is going to be called power up. So start sound power up, we are going to wait in control. You can find the wait block, and this will go right after the start sound power up block. And we're going to wait 0.2 seconds. So less than 1, but greater than 0. 0.2 is probably a good amount of time for this one. You can play with this number and see what it does to the sound. And the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to change the pitch effect. So the first thing we did was set it. Now we're going to change the pitch effect, and we're going to change it by 10, so we can just leave that block as it is. And then we need to put some blocks outside of this repeat until, but still inside both if statements. The first thing that we're going to do outside of this, once the space key is not being pressed, we are going to clear our sound effects, and then we are going to stop all sounds. Both of these you can find in the sound category. And then we are going to start another sound, which is the launch sound. So what this will be is like a buildup of sound, and then one different sound when the ball actually launches. So you can go ahead and test that out now once you have this code, and it should make an ascending sound, and then sort of like a suction cup launch sound once you let go of the space bar. There's also an alternate version of this if you would like to do one with color. So we can do a lot of the same things. So I'm going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out really quick and duplicate this part. So I'm taking out the blocks starting from set pitch. And then I'll go ahead and put those right back in. But I just wanted the blocks up until the second if then. And then we'll do some kind of the same things, but with the color of the ball. So first thing we'll do is set the color effect, which you can find in looks. And we're going to set the color effect to 80. This is another number that you can play around with. Then we will repeat until, so you can find that block in control. And that goes right underneath the set color effect block. And we're going to need the same not key space pressed block here. So I'm going to right click and duplicate. Make sure if you do so that your mouse is hovered over the green not block before you right click, and then we can put that inside of our repeat until. I will this time change the color effect. So before we set the color effect, and now we're going to change the color effect. And this time we're going to change it by a small number again, 0.5. And then outside of this repeat until, what we'll do is we are going to set the brightness effect when it launches. Then what we will do is, so this brightness effect is kind of like when we did the launching sound, just so you see something when it actually launches. And then what we'll do after this is clear the graphic effects, which you can also find in looks, just so that it goes back to our regular basketball when we are done shooting. And now if you press the green flag, you should be able to see it change color as well. Awesome. So there's only a few more things that we have to do. We are going to go to another sprite. So let's go on over to the hoop sprite and do a little bit of code there so that we can set up the animation for the net when the basketball goes in. So there's no code. It looks like all your code goes away, but it's just all on the basketball sprite. We've written a lot of code so far. We won't write as much code on this hoop sprite. We just need to do a few things. So click on over to the hoop sprite in the using the thumbnail in the sprites pane. And in this one, we will need a green flag block. And we are going to make sure that our hoop is showing. Then we are going to make sure that it's on a specific costume. So we have a couple different costumes for this hoop. So that we have this costume for when the basketball goes in. So it looks like it's going in. And we are going to make sure to switch the costume to hoop normal. So you can see now when you press the green flag, it's just the normal one without the ball in it. Then what we're going to do is, because the hoop and the backboard are separate sprites here, we are going to make sure that they always look like one sprite by going to motion. Actually, first we need a forever block. So let's go to control and grab a forever block. And then in motion, we're going to grab the block that says go to random position and attach that inside of our forever block. And then use the drop down to change to backboard. So we always want it attached to the backboard, and this will always happen if we put it in a forever block. The next thing that we're going to do is on our basketball, we sent this message when the ball goes in earlier. And the messages are kind of like a way for the different sprites code to communicate with each other. So we are going to use that message in our hoop sprite. So in events, there's a hat block that says when I receive message 1. You can place this anywhere on your workspace. The first thing that we're going to do is start the sound hi whoosh, and then we will switch our costume. So in looks, we are going to get that same switch costume to block, but this time we're going to switch it to hoop width. So it's with the ball in it. And then we're going to wait just a short amount of time again. So in control, you can grab the wait block and change the value from 1 to 0.2 seconds. And then we need another switch costume to block. And we're going to switch it back finally to the normal one without the ball in it. So we can test this out. Oh, I'm going to need more power than that. See if I can get one in the hoop. I'll just move it. Let's see if I can get one in. Okay, 54 is too low. There we go. Okay, so I heard the sound, I saw the little animation play, and then the basketball drops to the edge here. Pretty cool. Okay, the next thing that we're going to code is the backboard, so that so that it starts in the middle every time you start the game, but also so that the backboard moves every time you get one in. We were on the hoop. Now we're going to click on the backboard thumbnail in the sprites pane and grab another green flag event. We're going to make sure that our backboard is showing when we begin, and we're also going to go to motion and grab a block that says go to X, a number, and then Y, and it'll have a number. These numbers won't always be the same, but we're going to change them anyways to 0 and 0. That way when we click on the green flag, it always starts in the same position in the middle. And then we are going to do something also when this sprite receives the message. So in events, we need the hat block that says when I receive message 1. We are going to wait 1 second. We can wait a full second. I know it seems like a long amount of time now, but we will wait a full second, and then we're going to get another one of those go-to blocks. But instead of typing numbers in, we're going to use some random positions. So in operators, there's a block that says pick random 1 to 10. We're going to get 2 of these, and we're going to put them in both the X and Y's. So instead of typing that number, we will just drop this pick random block in the X and the Y value spots. For X, we're going to use the values -50 to 180. And on the Y pick random, we're going to use the values negative or -100 to 100. And this will give it sort of a range that it can go within, so that you're not trying to, so that it doesn't spawn right above where the Coyote sprite is, because you won't be able to get the ball in. That is, we need to code the end of the game actually. So we're almost done. I was about to say that's it, but back on the basketball sprite, let's decide what happens when we get to a certain amount of points and code a little celebration at the end. We will need another green flag event here back on, make sure you're back on the basketball sprite. And this one will be kind of like we're ending the game. We are going to grab, this time from control, we're going to grab a block that says wait until. Inside of the pointy space on wait until, we need a comparator. So we're going to get the greater than, which is the first comparator here. in the left side of this greater than block, we are going to put the variable. So in variables, we're going to put the rounded variable points. And we're going to check to see if our points are greater than 9. So once they become greater than 9, then it'll do the code that we attach underneath this. First thing that we're going to do is hide, and then we are going to hide our variables. That's why we put the show variable blocks before, because we're going to hide our variables for this celebration. So we're going to hide points, and we are going to hide power. And then we are going to set our points to 0 to reset the game. And then what we'll do is forever, we are going to go to a random position. And once we go to a random position, we don't need to change this. So you can find that random position block in motion, and we can leave it as random position this time. We are going to change the color effect, and you can leave this as 25 or play with this number. And then we are going to create a clone. And this will do this pretty quickly. So this will be, you'll have to get to 9 or get to 10 points, greater than 9. You'll have to get to 10 points to see what happens here. I won't show you that part. But once you're done with this, you are totally done with the normal part of this project. I do encourage you to go to spursgive.org/coding to see we have a step-by-step guide that's a PDF that you can follow, and on that PDF at the very end there will be some adventure modes. You can either do one of our adventure mode ideas, which is kind of just a way to build on top of this game, or you can come up with your own adventure mode ideas. While you're playing this game, I do suggest playing it a little bit once you're done, to see what you like about it and to see what you don't like about it, about the way that it works. And then you can either change existing code to make it work differently. You can add code to add new features. And those adventure mode ideas will be on a PDF that you can, a step-by-step guide PDF that you can get on spursgive.org/coding. Okay, I know that was a lot of code. I hope you took breaks. You can always go back. If something's not working, you can always go back and check the video, or you can go to spursgive.org and get that step-by-step guide. It does have pictures of the code on there, so you can check to see if the pictures are the same and hunt for some bugs if it's not working like you think it should be. But I have had a lot of fun coding this with y'all. My name is Max. I work for Youth Code Jam. I'm a lead instructor. This has been our basketball launcher activity for our Spurs Give Coyote coding camp. Thanks.